So I want to welcome everyone and thank you for joining us at My Happier Life. And we've got Patricia Kavanagh. She is the creator of the third act. Welcome, Patricia.
Hi, everybody.
So Patricia and I, we've known each other for well over a decade, I think.
I think so.
Okay, wow. So it's been interesting because we've been working together on web stuff, and it's been interesting. We recently just kind of were talking about happiness, and I've been moving into happiness for years and years as I've gone through my own path, but it sounds like you've been studying happiness for quite a long time. Do you want to talk about that?
Yes, it's so interesting when we were talking and kind of discovered. I know we've known a little bit, but when we discussed it recently, it was amazing how many similarities we've had about this exploration. And I, for many years, have been a psychotherapist for over 30 years, and so I've worked with lots and lots and lots of people. And I got to a point where I felt like I really wanted to focus on, instead of what makes people sad and what makes people disconnected, I wanted to focus on what makes people happy and connected and more alive in their life. I mean, there's a place for both of those. We have to sometimes explore what keeps us from happiness, but I wanted to shift focus, particularly in doing my coaching work, to what makes people happy. And that's when I came across Martin Seligman's work. And he was, for a number of years, head of the American Psychological Association. And he decided he would shift the focus from problems and depression and anxiety and shifted to an exploration and a research on happiness. So he was one of the early explorers. There were others, but Martin was really one of the early folks in this field. And so he's done tons and tons of research, and all of the third act work and all of the courses and the classes and the materials are all focused on happiness. And the other person I would mention is Professor Csikszentmihalyi, who wrote this book called Flow. I think that's how you pronounce his name. Everybody pronounces it.
Yeah, it's a big, long, difficult name. Trust me.
It is. So he wrote this great book called Flow, and I read that and it kind of blew my mind. And so I've added parts of that in to the third act work as well.
Well, now their work is fascinating because they're actually doing scientific studies into the field of happiness. So, they've both been pioneers into the field of happiness and the science of it, which is great. So I always say his name, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi.
So I say Mihai Csikszentmihalyi.
And I always apologize to him when I say it. I was like, I'm sorry, Dr. Mihai, because I think it's Greek for Michael, and I go with that. But Flow is one of his major books, because he tries to define what happiness even is, because we all have different words for it. Some people say happiness, some people say joy, other people say bliss. And so it's like, well, we even have a tough time finding a name for this thing. And it's not just an emotion, right? Happiness isn't just how we feel. It's kind of it's a way of life. It's in, like you use the word, connection.
Yeah.
To me, that's a major part of feeling happy or at peace or joyful, is like that connectedness. And so, you've mentioned these two doctors, Seligman and Csikszentmihalyi. I don't know.
Pronunciation.
And they're pioneers into the field of happiness, and you're kind of a pioneer into your field. You've mentioned the third act. So what is the third act for everyone watching?
So the third act is that developmental state. It's an adult developmental state, and I call it the third act, where it's where you've finished growing your career. It's where your children are launched or mostly launched. And the things that you've been doing during that part of your life are not either not happening anymore or not fulfilling you anymore. And so the third act is about that stage of life that people move into, usually when they're around in their 50s, mid 50s, late 50s, but it's not actually a date or an age, it's a frame of mind. There's another aspect to it. It's that you're realizing that the end of your life is a little closer than the beginning of your life. And so that helps to focus your intention about what is left for you to do in your life. And so that's what the third act stage is about. It's about that intentionality in this last section of your life.
So some people get to that part of their life and they kind of have a midlife crisis. And this is not the best term, but I always think of what you do as alternative retirement planning. And it's because, you know, everybody thinks of retiring with the financial side. They're going to do the retirement planning is all about the money, saving up their money, having it vested in different places where they'll have their nest egg. But then, you know, retirement's not about the money. It's like, what do we do, right? And that's more of what you help with.
That's absolutely right. I am not a financial planner. I am a life coach, and my focus is on helping people create a happy and successful retirement lifestyle. And what's really great is people have a financial plan often, but they haven't thought about, as you said, what do you really want to do with this precious time of your life, these last 20 or 30 years that you've been given. And so it's really important to have a successful third act plan. You need to have both the lifestyle plan, so we focus on what brings you happiness and joy, and to have a financial plan that goes with that. So they really go hand in hand. They can be a perfect fit. And when you don't have, just to go on a little step further, and when you only have a financial plan, many times I've heard people say, I have all my ducks in a row. I retired. I thought everything was great. I played golf for a couple of months. I traveled for a couple of months. I cleaned out my garage. And then what? And then what? And that's when I come in. That's when I come in.
Okay. And this might be a tough question. I have my own thoughts, but I think it ties into what you're talking about. Why do you think people have their midlife crisis? I mean, they're freaking out what are they trying to accomplish, and usually doing it poorly?
Well, I think for so long, people have been focused on what others need. So in the second act, it's very little about what you're choosing to do. You're usually working for somebody. It's doing what they want you to do. Of course, you signed up for it, but it's their vision, it's their structure, it's their timeline. And it's the same if you have a family. You're focused on taking care of those children and helping them to become productive, happy, successful adults. So it's not really your time or your structure. It is your choice, but not really your choice. And in the third act, there's a shift, and a lot of times people don't know what to do. They don't know really what makes them happy. And they kind of thrash around and think, well, maybe it's buying a fast car, maybe it's traveling on a cruise, maybe that's it. And they're not really sure. And because it's a new perspective, it's a new stage of life. And for many humans, this is the first time on the planet that so many people have been alive for this length of time that has allowed them to move into this stage of life. You know, up until 100, 150 years ago, we just didn't live this long. But now, because we have health pretty much and wealth pretty much, we have this extra 20 or 30-year bonus that many of your listeners may have heard of.
Yeah, you know, and so you've got the health, you've got the wealth, and at retirement, I have the weekly hangouts called the happiness hangouts, and a lot of people are searching for happiness. They find our hangouts because they're searching for happiness because something in life has changed. So what you're talking about is retirement is a very natural change in life, but people aren't really prepared for it mentally or emotionally because, and this is what I get a lot, is people don't know who they are without this sense of purpose. So if I'm not, you know, balancing the books for my clients or building the websites or doing the marketing or running the business, I don't know who I am without that sense of purpose. So do you find that a lot when people come to you? They're looking for some sense of purpose?
Well, they're looking for both of the things that you mentioned. One is if they've retired, they no longer have that job that gives them an identity, a title, a function. And so they feel kind of at sea because they just don't know what to do. And they don't know who they are if they don't have a job. And so that's a big issue for people often. What is my identity? And the other thing is we don't have many role models for good retirement. Our parents or grandparents maybe retired and they did stay home and watch TV, or they played with the grandkids, or maybe they traveled a little bit, but they usually didn't live 20 or 30 years. I mean, there was a reason why retirement started at 65. It was because the government realized, it was the German government that realized that people really wouldn't be living much more past 65, so they could offer a kind of social security benefit to folks at 65. And so, you know, people don't have a good idea of what retirement is in the 21st century. They really don't.
So if you put that with the history that you were just talking about, it sounds like a luxury with a hook, you know, almost like a edge to that sword of, you know, hey, I'm finally free, but then now what? And so I'm curious, how does planning help people move into that third phase of their life? You know, how can you help them make it a smoother transition?
Well, one of the ways is that we focus on Martin Seligman's latest research, which gives 5 keys to happiness. So when we help folks plan their retirement lifestyle plan, when we help them design it, we include all the aspects of what Martin Seligman recommends. And those are active engagement, positive emotions, positive relationships, meaning and purpose, which is the point that you brought up, and also a sense of accomplishment. So human beings really need a sense of meaning and purpose. And if their meaning and purpose has been just focused on their 9-to-5 job, or raising children, and that they don't have the job and the children are launched, then what gives their life meaning and purpose? So I help folks explore what gives you meaning and purpose now in your life. And I do that through a series of exercises and questions.
So you've got a systematic approach. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Because what you're talking about can be a fairly subtle or ethereal, because I mean, the example that I tend to use is like, you know, you can be a doctor or you could be a healer. And the difference between those is that a doctor is like this external role that somebody's filling. Whereas, say, if you're a healer, well, you could be a mother and be a healer. You know, maybe you're healing your kids' emotions or their boo-boos when they fall off their bikes. Or, you know, you can be a healer as a teacher and just lend a listening ear to your students and help them heal by sharing difficult emotions.
Mm-hmm.
You can be a healer in all sorts of different ways, but that sense of identity comes from within. So do you feel like that's an important differentiation?
Gosh, that's a really interesting question. I think people begin to discover an inner identity. I mean, they may have felt it when they were a child. Oftentimes we go back to childhood to think about how they had a sense of play. What were they engaged in when they were kids? What did they have to set aside to grow up and be in business or raise families and be a real adult, you know? So sometimes we go back to that sense of the child and what gave that identity, what gave that child an identity, and bring it forward. Because you're no longer maybe a nurse, but you have this, well, I'm going into skills now, but you have an identity, to use your idea, as a healer, as someone who helps us. And that identity can be pulled forward into the third act. You might be doing different things than a nurse, but still those skills and talents that are a part of our identity, we can bring forward into the third act. So there's a bit of exploration in this process. Me too. I really love it.
And I also like the point that you bring up the play, because, you know, for me, play is like, I used to play as a kid. That was probably one of my defining features as a kid. Maybe it is for lots of us or most of us, but it's like we're happy until we grow up. And that seems kind of sad when I think of it that way.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's important to bring that aspect of play into our lives now and have a healthy sense of it. So that's really cool that you help people reawaken that part of themselves as they move in. Because I don't think of my retirement and think, yeah, I'm going to be playing. But I mean, that's pretty an important part of it, isn't it?
It is really important. So it's a sense of, well, it's kind of grown up play. Like you have a sense of playfulness in it because this is your design, this is your creation, so you can make it however you want the plan to be. And we want to include, I mean, one of the things we talk about is positive emotions, and there's nothing more positive than than feeling playful. And like one of the little exercises that we have in the third act is to think about when was the last time that you were really happy. You know, close your eyes and then think about the last time that you were really happy, and share that out loud with the other group that's in the room or on the Zoom. And oftentimes it's a very simple pleasure. Like for me, a simple pleasure for me is every morning I get up, I make a cup of tea, I make my partner a cup of coffee, or he makes me a cup of tea and a cup of coffee, and we sit together and talk about our day and move into our day really in a gentle and sweet way. And that sets the tone for the whole day, but it's a simple pleasure. It's playful, it's not serious, not getting down to business, but it's this sweet, simple pleasure that evokes positive emotions. And so that's one of the exercises that we do, because people forget that it's the simple things in life that bring us happiness and pleasure.
Yeah, I'm glad you shared, because I was actually going to ask you, hoping it wasn't too personal of a question. I was curious, you know, what would come to mind for you, because when you were sharing that, what came to mind for me was when I get to play the pipe organ. I'm a pipe organ classical music geek, and even though I don't get to go practice at the church just because of, you know, Corona and all the touch shared surfaces and that kind of thing, just respecting other people's safety, I have a keyboard here at home, and I'll read the music and I'll practice on the keyboard. And you know, we go back to Dr. Mihai. I'm just going to say his first name. He talks about that in his book of, you know, he calls happiness flow. And I think the feeling that we have, you know, when you're having your time with your partner and the coffee and the tea, and then when I'm engaged with the music, is that sense of connectedness. Again, I, you know, come back to that again, is that simple sense of just being. And it's not forced, it's not even necessarily planned. It sounds like it's part of your routine to do that each morning. And you do that because you know that it's going to bring you that sense of calm and peace and connectedness. And you know, would you say it's important to, I mean, should we plan those things into our day? I mean, should we make them habits?
Absolutely. Like it's one of the, when I work with my clients, it's one of the things, one of the exercises that we do is to visualize the perfect day. And how does your day start? And for me, if I don't start my day with that quiet time with myself and with my partner, the rest of the day feels really jangled to me. So it's kind of like setting the space, setting the intention by taking that little bit of time to make coffee or tea for someone you love and sit and be with them, sometimes in silence, sometimes talking. And that just sets the tone. And so that's an important part of the plan. That's an important part of the plan.
It sounds like you help people figure out, get back to what really matters in life. And you shared
Absolutely.
a lot of things. And I think that sounds like a really good one. It's like, so what really matters in life? And I think we spend a lot of our career time trying to make money so that we can retire. And so we get a little bit, maybe our priorities get shifted to the wrong way, and we think that money was the priority. And so that's why we do our financial retirement planning. And so you're talking about this whole other part of life that's not about money. It's about what really matters.
It's about what really matters. And something that you said just brought something to my mind. Let's see if I can remember it. What sometimes is hard for folks when they come to the third act workshop and retirement lifestyle planning is that they're used to goal setting. And I have no problem with goal setting, and we do have goals and action steps at the end of our work together, but this isn't about goals. This is about having an experience of living that's different than the second act. So it is about happiness. It is about giving your life a different kind of meaning, perhaps, and a different kind of purpose. Not to say that there isn't a sense of accomplishment about it, but it isn't about getting that next position in your job as you move up the rung. It isn't about getting a bigger salary. Not to say that people don't want to have a salary or some kind of remuneration when they're retired. Most people do want that. They do want to continue to work in some way, but it's not goal setting. It's like looking at what are the simple pleasures and being sure to put those into your plan. Who are the positive relationships in your life, and how do you build those? And it's clear that connections are critical. I mean, you've mentioned connections several times now this morning or in our talk, and connections are fundamental in all of the research that's been done about successful and healthy and happy aging, that you can have all the money in the world, and if you don't have connections, you will not have a happy and healthy retirement. It's just scientifically proven in a long Harvard study by Gallant that is just phenomenal, where they studied people, I think it was almost like for 70 years, from the time they were little kids all the way up to into their 80s. A phenomenal study. And that was the major thing they found was connection is important. And I tend to believe that it's not only connection with others, but my experience is you have to be also connected to yourself as well. So it goes both ways.
And it sounds like that your coaching helps people accomplish that. They gain a different sense of identity. Who am I if I'm not doing these things or living this life? Another thing that kind of sounds like you help people do is create a sense of structure for their lives. And I've encountered a lot of people who, when they left junior high, high school, they had this childhood where they didn't have a lot of structure at home. And so they went into the military because they craved that structure. And I think people go into their jobs because they, consciously or unconsciously crave some structure. And I think part of what happens when they get out is that they're looking at this part of their life where, like you were saying, they may have 20, 30, 40 more years. And if there's no structure there, then that can be a really scary thing. And so it sounds to me like you also help people create a sense of structure for their lives, that they may not have gained a skill for doing that for themselves. Like you were saying before, it's always for someone else. So would you be willing to talk about that just a little bit?
Sure. One of the things that people often say when they come to my trainings in person or on Zoom is they are so grateful that they don't have to get up at 5 in the morning or 6 in the morning to go to work, that they do have their own structure. They can get up at 8 o'clock and have a cup of tea or a cup of coffee like I do and kind of ease into their day. So that's one side of the structure issue. The other is that people feel very lost. And one of the things that happens if you're not intentional about your time, things will just happen. They'll just, you'll find yourself doing this or that, but it doesn't have any focus. It doesn't have any intentionality about it. So it's very important to have meaning and purpose in your plan, so that you have a sense of what's significant to choose in your life now, not just go from this to that in your life. Somebody calls and you go out to coffee. Somebody stops by and you sit down and you have a cup of tea and talk about things. I mean, there's nothing wrong about that, but your whole life can fill up with that. And you find that you don't have really a sense of meaning and purpose when things are just random. So intentionality is important, which is different than setting goals. It's different, it has a different quality.
I would have to hear more about that, because that sounds like an important differentiation. And I just have to say, I live in a retirement city. I mean, it's a warm place, so we've got a lot of snowbirds. We have a lot of people who move here after they retire. And I'll be honest, there are a lot of people who retire, don't know what to do with themselves, and so a lot of them actually drink, and a lot of them just sit in front of the TV and just watch TV all day because they don't know what to do with themselves. And so it sounds like you help people avoid that. I mean, some people may want that, and I have no judgments, but I'm sure there's lots of people who don't really think of their retirement as, sitting in front of the TV and letting the day waste away.
Well, I'm so glad you brought that up, because one of the things that I was really excited about when I started this business back in 2008 is I was looking for some kind of retirement focused help, and there wasn't anything really. Like, how do I want my life to be, when I'm 65 and older? And there was nobody out there. And I had this, when I realized that, I thought, oh my God, there's this huge untapped potential of people who are retiring with wisdom and experience. And what a waste to have them sit in front of the TV and drink 2 cocktails a night. It just made me sad. And I thought, oh goodness, I have to do something. I have to do something. It's not here. It's not available. I'm going to create it. And so so your point is exactly why I started this business, because I didn't want to end up that way, and I didn't want the people that I love and know to end up that way. But there was no model for it. There was no training for it. There was nothing. So
that's pretty amazing. So you're a pioneer in what you're doing. That's fantastic.
I am. I'm one of the earlier folks in this field. I mean, I started at a rough time in 2008. I mean, it wasn't the best time to start a business, and most people were hanging on by their fingertips to their jobs. And not, I would go to a dinner party or a cocktail party, and people would say, "What are you doing?" And I would talk about the third act, and people would turn around and walk the other way because nobody wanted to talk about retirement. It was not a subject that was the positive one for people at that time.
Well,
but the times have changed. Times have changed.
They have changed. They've changed a lot, and I think they're going to continue changing. I mean, you and I were talking a few days ago about younger generations and their relationship to retirement. I mean, I know a lot of them are thinking to themselves that they're probably going to have to just work until they die, which isn't a fun way to think of life. And so I think, as you talk, I think there's a lot more hope than that. And I have 2 questions, I guess, tied to my statement is, would you say that there's hope for younger people, and when should people start doing this lifestyle planning for their retirement?
Well, for younger people, I think the idea of working for the rest of your life as a drudgery doesn't have to be that. All of the people that I know who are retired and in their 50s, 60s, and 70s want to continue to work. It's not that they have to. It's that they want to. It gives them joy. It makes them happy to work. So I offer that to the younger folks, maybe in your audience, that it doesn't have to be drudgery when you get older. Maybe it's drudgery you have to put in your dues when you're younger, but you're not always putting in your dues for the rest of your life. You're not always having to work like that. So just to give you a little hope on the horizon. And then, oh gosh, I've forgotten the second part of your question.
Well, I'm just curious how, I think we instinctively know that we should be financially planning for our retirement, but I'm curious how soon we should start planning for the lifestyle side of retirement. I mean, should we wait until we retire, or?
Oh, no, 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 no. For sure, you should start before you retire. I mean, we can still do the work after, but it's much better if you can do it before and then just kind of adjust your plan as you move through retirement. But most people start, in their late 50s, early 60s. But again, it's not really an age. It's a state of mind that you'll notice, that you go to work and you look around and you go, I don't really want to be doing this anymore. There's got to be more to life than this. And you think, and then you find yourself thinking about, gosh, I'm 60. I might have another 30 years or 20 good ones. What do I want to do with this precious time? And it's when your mind starts shifting perspective, that's the time to begin to plan for your non-financial lifestyle retirement. And hopefully you've been planning for your retirement all along since your employment, that you've been putting money away. So that's really important. But the part about designing a lifestyle plan, that might come a little bit later, like in your late 50s, early 60s.
That's fantastic. And I think you've given people a lot of things to consider as they approach that time. I mean, to consider, they are going to have time after they retire to do something, and to be thinking of what might they want to do, to think, what kind of structure would they like for their lives. I think being mindful of what really matters in life, and to kind of start letting go of that thought that maybe money is the most important thing, but there's actually other things that are more important in life. Being connected, I may be the one saying that the most, but I think you agree that that's an important thing. And
it's number one.
Okay, good.
It's number one.
And so to be thinking of some of those things. And so I'm curious, whatever age and whatever stage they are, how can your coaching help them make it the best part of their life, even, because I guess, retirement really could be the best part of people's lives. I mean, how does your coaching help them?
Well, my coaching helps them because I have a really clear step-by-step plan that people can walk through. On my coaching online, I offer, group coaching. I offer sessions, different combinations of 5 or 10 sessions that people can work with me individually. I have workbooks. So for me, the thing that's really unique about the third act is that I have a really clear, easy step to follow. So a lot of people who come in to see me initially feel really overwhelmed, like, God, I don't know who I'm going to be. I can't imagine what I'm going to do with my time. I'm overwhelmed. And so if you focus down and go step by step through the process, you will come out the other end with a plan, and a plan that you feel good about, and a vision you feel excited about, that you can share with your financial planner, and with your family and friends, that you feel really happy and engaged in your life rather than pulling back. I often think about the third act in a new way, like in the old retirement idea. If you think about an airplane kind of coming down for a landing and everybody's putting up their, well, we used to have it for quite a number of months now, tightening your seatbelt and putting up your tray table. But for the third act, it's not landing, it's like taking off in a new life. It's taking off. And so I help people with a really easy step-by-step process of making a plan. And the thing that's very interesting about this time of this pandemic time is that people are calling me and asking about rejiggering their plan, rethinking their plan, because they had a really great third act plan, but now they're not able to travel, or they're not able to go out and do the volunteer work, or they're not able to go out and do the job that they, maybe the business that they designed for themselves or created for themselves. So people come back and want to refocus their third act. And I encourage that. You know, nothing is written in cement. This is a time of flexibility and openness. So you have a goal, you have some intent, you have intentions, you have a vision, but you can change those.
So I love that. So you help take the fear out of retirement, which sounds amazing. It sounds like you're helping people take the fear out of the pandemic as well. I mean,
yeah,
because there's really just a lot of fear inherent in something like a pandemic we're experiencing now. And so I'm curious what thoughts you might have for people, like how do we be happier when we're in the middle of a pandemic and the world kind of just feels like it's falling apart? You know, do we have to be afraid, or can we be happier?
so I'll give you an example of a client, the client that I'd had about 10 years ago, and then who came back to me and had her plan all set up, and she is a writer, and she had written a book, and she was all ready to go out and do all of these promotional PR talks. And because of the pandemic, she couldn't do it. And she was just like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I have this book, but I can't get it out. And so we talked and thought about it. And she'd had this one opportunity to do a Zoom presentation. And she was really anxious about it. She didn't think she would like it. And she did it, and it was really successful, and she liked it. And then she realized that she could do more Zooms, and she could do more presentations to more people than she could have ever done before the pandemic. So what I hope people do is to look for the opportunities of making that old idea of making lemonade out of lemons. That people still are looking for information. They're still wanting to connect. It's a new way of connecting, but we can connect as human beings still. And so that's an example of one way of dealing with this kind of really challenging time that we find ourselves in.
Yeah, I think that's the best thing at all. You're talking about people's attitude, and that's, with my happiness coaching, that's what I help people work with, is their attitude. It's not what's happening, it's how you view what's happening. And if you see this as, an opportunity, and if you see retirement as an adventure rather than this scary thing, it's like, well, you can take the fear out of all of these things by having a plan, having a positive focus, and working with your attitude to say, hey, this could be an opportunity rather than some big scary thing. So it shifts how you connect with what's going on.
Where is the opportunity here? Where is the opportunity?
Yeah.
So I have another quick example. I have a young friend who is an expert in play, and he had everything set up to do these in-person camps for adults and playing for adults, and everything got canceled. And so he kind of, was knocked back for a little bit, but then realized that people who are working from home need play just as much. So he created all of these online games and these ways of people from the company, from all over the company, getting together on Zoom and playing games together. And it's been wildly successful. So that's another example kind of in your bailiwick of play.
I want to join. I want to join a Zoom group. That sounds great.
I know, it is fun.
Yeah, because as a kid, one of my favorite things was hide and seek, and I'm not really going to do that now. Won't be able to find other adults to play hide and seek with me. But I think we do have to find ways to play, and like you were saying before, it looks different as adults, but we still play. There's others who want to play and have fun, and so that's really cool.
It's important to play. It's critical.
It's critical. I agree with that. So yeah, we talked about all sorts of really great things people can think about, focus on, do in their lives. I'm curious how people can engage with you, um, so that you can help them take the fear out of retirement or start creating their structure for life.
Yeah, thank you for asking. You can connect with me on my website. It's www.thethirdAct.com. And the third act is spelled with the number 3. So be sure to use the number 3 when you put that in your Google search.
And I'll put the link in the videos wherever I share this, and
Thank you, I appreciate it.
so the3rdact.com.
Third act, THE.
Yep.
And for your listeners, I'm happy to give them a 20% discount if you just mention this podcast. And when you contact me, when you go to the website, you'll see that you can either get a free resource list, or you can sign up for a free discovery call with me, half-hour discovery call. So,
You've also got a fun quiz for people to take on your website.
That's right. You helped me put it on my website. Yeah, that quiz is really great because it helps you to assess where you are in your retirement. Is it too early? Are you just getting ready and it's time for you to really reach out and make connection with me, or are you happily along your way? It just gives you a good assessment of where you are.
Yeah, it gives people some really good questions to even think about, because if you think it's too early to start thinking about your retirement, go ahead and take the quiz anyway, just because those questions will get you thinking about things that really matter. So yeah, go to thethirdAct.com, take the quiz, download the resource list, engage Patricia with a call.
Yeah, give me a call.
Does fantastic work, and your offer is very generous. I and my followers would appreciate that very much.
I'm happy to do it.
Okay, that's fantastic. And now's the time. Again, we're talking about opportunity. Like, now is the perfect opportunity for all these. You really have to seize the moment, seize the day, seize this opportunity for. Oh, go ahead.
I mean, I agree with what you're saying. This particular time where we're sheltering in place at home for the most part. It's a great time to be thinking about this subject. If you're near to retirement, it's a great time to begin to refocus and rethink what you're doing with your life now. It's a perfect time.
So never fear, Patricia's here.
That's funny. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank you for being here on My Happier Life. Do you have any other thoughts or questions? I feel like we've had a wonderful conversation.
It's been great talking with you, PJ, and I appreciate so much the opportunity to reach out to your audience. And it's been just a pleasure, as always, to talk with you. So thank you.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure working with you as well. So Patricia Kavanaugh, thank you for being here. Check her out at thethirdAct.com. And thank you for joining us at My Happier Life. And here's to your happiness.
See you later.